Okay, so I have some head sheets for like 4 different haircuts, and then kind of the general rule of thumb of foil placement I do for each of these. Obviously, these are all variable depending on your client and their specific wants, but I thought that this could be fun. Yeah. So I have a pixie, a bob, a shag, and a long layer haircut. So we'll kind of just go short to long, and then I'll just like pass these around after I kind of go over them. So so for my pixie one, this is, when you asked me how I did like Haley's foil, like this is how I do it. And I should have had like a picture of my friend, but I don't. So she has her pixie. I mean, I think this generally works in most short, like shorter than a bob situations, but her pixie's a bit more moppy on the top, and then she's pretty tight around the sides and the back. So the goal being, I want to look and feel really blonde, but I do not want to do a bleach and tone, because in 4 weeks when I get the sides trimmed, I'm spotty looking, and she wants it to be fairly grow outable in between, but maintain that like really blonde feeling. So my goal is also to avoid having a hair hat situation where you are blonde and then you're dark. So I always do, basically just a mohawk section, and I go from being super bold to super sparse in the back, and it's a really soft blend backwards, so you still maintain the overall look of being light while keeping it really soft going into the sides where that weight line is. And in the crown, we don't have any bands where you can see clearly where the foil is growing out on that, because that's where all the hair comes from, right? In a pixie, it all kind of goes forward from the crown area, generally speaking. So this, when I pass around, you look at it, this kind of shaded section is where there is no sub in between. So I do back-to-back foils in this first front area, and then I switch to a weave and a slice, and a weave and a slice, and the only thing that's left out is what I weaved out. And then I move to where there's a sub in between each one of those then, so then it will go slice, sub, weave, sub, slice, and then in the back I'm just weaving with subsections in between. So does that make sense? Yeah, so you get all that bold brightness, but you don't end up with this like cap feeling like you've just put on a blonde wig on top of your naturally dark hair, which is something I can't stand. And then, so speaking of the cap situation, so I also do this placement on when the like soccer guy haircut and color was really in for like tween boys for a little bit. Like they wanted that like kind of forward, moppy, tight, and they wanted that like soccer guy like bleached top thing, but they didn't want to look like they bleached their own hair. And then so a lot of people were doing caps, but that still gets you this very sprinkled throughout look, where what they really want is to almost look like a bleach and tone in the front, but then they don't want the awful grow out that comes from all this back here not matching that boldness in the front. Does that make sense? So that's the foil placement I did on those boys too.
What about getting to the crown and to the like collar area? Do you get anything past that, or would you stop?
I do go a little, so I do go kind of like right below the crown, but I always leave, the reason I do like a mohawk is because if everything underneath is still left a little dark, you get that really nice, almost like it tapers down onto the darker hair before it gets short.
Versus like putting some in this direction.
Yep, yeah. So I pretty much just do the mohawk. If they've got a pretty tall head or a wider head, you could do a few horizontal ones under here if a mohawk isn't going to get you quite enough coverage. But yeah, because everyone's head is a little bit different. But I will go down past the crown, but I get really thin and like really like what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, like I leave big section, I weave out thicker sections than I pick up, if that makes sense, by the time I'm in this crown area, so it's really soft. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that head chart make sense?
Yes.
Or head sheet make sense? is like a bob foil placement. And my goal is to avoid the cheetah spots in the nape area when you foil too low. And then if you have any kind of layering in the nape section or stacking, and then you end up with these little spots or very clear lines. So that's the basic idea. How light, how bold, how packed in these are is obviously up to you based on your client's wants and needs, but and I went off of a middle part here just for ease. I would always kind of base this idea off of their part, or if they change up the part from like the middle to a side, I would keep everything in there pretty well weaved rather than sliced if I knew that about them. But I do basically a couple slices in the front, and then I'll do like a weave and then a slice right here based off of their hairline, so that they have that brightness and that softness in there. But if they ever do like pull it back halfway or they tuck or anything, we don't have this like really bright, like crazy bold right here. I want that boldness to be more up here in the like bang, what would be a bang area. And then off of their part, I always weave horizontally right onto the part. I never like to do vertical sections on the part, which I feel like everyone else goes like that. But for me, that's when I see exactly where I've foiled. So I go with the head shape from the part down. I start with a weave, and then I do a slice, and I basically just in between, I just flip flop between the two, or I just do slices if their hair is dense enough to handle all slices, but I always do a weave on the part. And if you just brush up to it, there's no line when it grows out.
Doing horizontal on the bottom.
Yeah. And then I do a triangle section around the crown, and I do almost all weaves on that again, so that you're getting this slow fade down to what's going to be darker underneath, and you don't have any like clear distinction for where your foiling stops. Does that also make sense? Yeah. So I do just basically I just do like this way, like I do like a little triangle up to the crown, and I usually leave this itty-bittiest bit unfoiled, and it just lays really, just disperses softly over the top. And then you don't have any of that, like when it splits, you can't see it. And when you leave that hair kind of untouched underneath, it's just a really soft dispersing down into what doesn't really get foiled generally in a bob shape. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so kind of a shag idea. I do pretty much, what did I write as my goal? My goal is to see color throughout the head while maintaining some dimension. So, when the hair is really shagged out, you can see everything. You can see where every hair is coming on. Yeah, you can see everything where every hair is coming from and where it's coming from on the head, because nothing is hidden underneath like a veil, if you will, right? So even if you're doing quote unquote a partial, you can place foils throughout the head. Like Jamie talked about one time, it's more about like how much time does it take you. That's kind of how she determines whether or not it's a partial versus a full. And I think that makes a ton of sense. So with the shag, I pretty much do slices all throughout, because I want to see those sheets of color coming through. Just how many I do is dependent upon the amount of hair on the head. Does that also make sense? So I'll always go with the hairline at the nape. I go with the hairline, the shape of the hairline in the front. I'm gonna do a couple big V's in the back to just gain like surface area. I've covered surface area all throughout. And then I'm gonna do that same just with the head shape on the top. So I've kind of got like this covered. I do a few big V's, and then I just do my from my part line down. And I can do that in 30 to 45 minutes. And I'm covering a lot of ground in not a ton of time. And so the hair is gonna be whatever color you're doing, blonde, red, whatever, throughout the entirety of the head, and but you're still gonna maintain all of that dimension.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Some sometimes I struggle with like getting it right on the money piece or
Mhm.
like the brighter.
Mm-hmm.
Like I typically like fan it from the point so that
Uh-huh.
like where I want it to be. But I'm curious
Yeah.
how you would
You
explain
fan it from a point, like if we're going off of like this middle part, let's say,
Yeah.
you kind of go like this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. From
Okay.
like that and
Uh-huh.
then maybe like another thing. But
Oh.
I'm curious how you would do it.
Yeah, I just.
Do
I
they
s-
want it that heavy right there?
When they want that money piece.
When they want
Yeah.
like a more bold one. I mean, I just go, I start here and I will take my first section down. I'm going off of the start of the
Like in a
hairline.
triangle.
Mm, not so much a triangle. I mean, I probably pulled up a triangle because that's what I have happening on my head right now. It's hard to see. But I probably do, I don't know, 3 to 4 depending on.
Would you do like a weave slice weave? Or would you do like a
I would do, sometimes I'll weave out some little fine little hairs so that there isn't any kind of line when the hair gets pulled back. So I would do a really, really fine weave and then I pretty much do slices and then I'll weave out of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, to kind of, like, so that there's the boldness, but then it dissipates quickly into
Mhm.
softness. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Yeah,
But
but I go right
sometimes
off of
I'll
the
just-
shape of the hairline.
Sometimes I just do it like that and then up to
Oh,
that.
yeah,
Do you
mhm.
do that too?
Yeah, I do that. I kind of do them personally in like more like this is one section and then this is another section.
Okay.
Yeah, that I'll kind of work up to, but yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you want this to be a separate boldness than this in here, I would do it
And like
as one
start there
section.
and-
Yeah. Mhm.
And sometimes with those like heavy bangs, if you're focusing so much on the hairline, that's covered anyways.
Yeah.
So then like figuring out where,
Yeah.
Bring it up enough,
where
Yep.
it's actually gonna go from.
which would go into like your fringe cutting, like if
Mhm.
it's heavy, you have to.
Yeah, because yeah, that would depend too. If it's longer all in the front and you're gonna see that kind of, that very distinct money piece section,
Mhm.
then you can just focus on the hairline, off of the hairline a few
Yeah.
pieces. And then, but if you do have more of a bang that comes forward, you would probably wanna do more of like a pie shape.
I just feel like it took me
Yeah.
a minute to like figure it out and I think I got it, but like other people may be in the same boat, I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. I think that makes sense. Okay, and then like a long layer foil placement, it's not too terribly different from the shag, only I leave much bigger sections out in this area to create those shadows for your foils to pop off of, to see all of that kind of ribboning through dimension. And I do a lot more slicing and weaving combo to create different kinds of sheets and ribbons of the brighter color. Does that make sense? Yeah, so, because with the long layer, you know, you are gonna see the hair fall to different points, but not in the same way that you will with like a shaggy cut, right? So you wanna see a lot more, I leave a lot more pockets of untouched hair. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I still will usually do the hairline so that when they pull it up, they're not completely dark underneath and then like light on top. I'll do another kind of, some of these kind of almost like opposite V sections. I'll do that same thing in the crown as I do with like a pixie or a bob. And then same kind of hairline and then a few on here, leaving these triangles, kind of like 3 major triangles in the hair for the highlights to like pop on top of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There you go. That was it.
I like it.
Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry. But I'll like leave those in the back, particularly for some of the younger stylists or whatever. But
Do you want this?
yeah.